what's happening in the Congo, what's happening in Cameroon, what's happening in Somalia, what's happening in Mali, what's happening in Niger. Who are the people you see holding the guns? It's not white people. It's black people holding the guns. It's us killing each other. We're being given peanuts to kill each other. Have you ever wondered? A continent that doesn't have a single gun manufacturing plant. We have endless supply of guns. If you want to know what is going on in our Africa, I often say, when you hear something happen in Africa, look for the story behind the story. You want to know what's going on in our Africa, follow the guns. The conversation we are embarking on today is to see where we can say, how do we come together as children of one mother Africa? Can we please be the generation that's going to put an end to this carnage? Can we please be the generation that's going to turn the corner and begin to tell our children the truth and nothing but the truth? Imagine 20 years from now. You have your granddaughter, you have your grandson, and they're going to ask you, grandpa, grandmother, there were problems with our Africa. There were problems with our Black race. What did you do? What did you do, grandma? What did you do, grandpa? Why must I live in a world that I'm going to be hated simply because of the color of my skin? Why must I live in a world afraid to be the next George Floyd? What is your answer going to be, my brothers and sisters? That we did nothing. Just like our parents and grandparents, we did nothing. And now we're just going to continue to be the underdogs, the mothers and fathers of humanity. We're going to continue to be treated as the scum of the earth. I would hope your answer to your grandchildren is that my granddaughter, my grandson, together with my brothers and sisters, we got together. We understand that what was taken away from us pivotally is denial of economic liberation. Economic liberation was denied to Black people across the globe. Even in this beautiful United States, had the Black people been given the promised 40 acres and a mule, their conditions, their economic situation will be very different. As African countries were quote unquote getting their liberation from the colonizers, we were given limited political liberation to this day, but economic liberation was never given to us. The multinational companies that ran and operated in those countries that the colonies held, they remain in those countries to this day. They are the major employers in every African country. If you were a British colony, the majority of the multinationals in your country are British companies. If you were a French colony, the majority of the multinational companies in your country are French companies. They're the major employers and employing thousands of people. And if the heads of states try to force them to pay taxes, and by the way, most of them don't pay taxes. They have safe havens where they keep their money. They underreport what they mine. They underreport what they're selling, what they mine for. The end result is they don't pay taxes. They hide their money, safe havens. They are involved in illegal trade, illegal mining, illegal fishing, anything you can think of that they could steal out of Africa, they're involved in. The end results, trillions of dollars are getting out of Africa every year. And they return back 50 billion as aid. And we Africans are very happy to receive that aid. And we will thank them from hell to high heaven for giving us peanuts out of what they would have stolen from us at night. So I hope your answer to your grandchildren is, my brothers and sisters, we all got together. We analyzed our circumstances. We spoke about what was really going on. We educated each other about what was really going on. And that we should not be allowed to be thrown a shiny object and run after the shiny object when the real issues are over here. That example is about, for example, when I used to travel around the country, the minute I would finish talking, the first question, 100% of the time, but Ambassador, the African leaders are corrupt. I don't disagree. We have corruption issues in Africa at every level, down to the person who is leading the janitorial department. We gotta go after the corruption. 50 billion is a lot of money. Let's go after it. However, let's not go after 500 billion because we are being told to ignore that. It was a shocker for me to realize the corruption among African leaders was the beginning, the middle, and the end of every conversation to do with Africa. Until I started talking about the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. The question I had for the diaspora was, I understand your outrage over the $50 billion out of corruption. That's what the corruption watchdogs say is coming out of Africa from corruption. I said, where is your 10 times outrage over the $500 billion taken by France from 14 African countries? And that's when there was silence. They just simply did not know. If we're going to talk about corruption, let's talk about all corruption, because we got to deal with all of it. Tell me one African leader, one African country that has changed a leader and things changed. None. We can change leaders like we change clothes in Africa. Nothing is going to change because the fundamentals have not yet been addressed. Allow me to use the example of a tree. We have issues above the ground and issues below the ground. To the best of my ability, let me give you examples of issues above the ground and issues above the tree as they pertain to our Africa, so you can have a clearer understanding of what's at stake here. The issues of leadership, the issues of corruption, issues of lack of access to quality education, healthcare, infrastructure. Those are the trees, the leaves, the flowers, the branches above the tree that fall off one season after the other. And we complain. And as long as we don't address the issues of the root, the issues above the tree will continue. We can change leaders all we want. We might succeed at maybe 1 year we have a good healthcare system, but pretty soon supplies will begin to fall off because we have no manufacturing. What's at the bottom? What's in the root? Is France, for example, taking over 500 billion out of Africa.
Writing's not that.
Forcing the leaders to only acquire military equipment from them. Do you think France is going to sell them superior military equipment than them? Forcing the countries to get their military trained by them. Do you think France is going to train them better than their own military? Being forced by France to say, we will occupy your countries, we will have military presence and can invade you without notice if we feel that our interests are being violated. Your natural resources, discovered and yet to be discovered. France has the first right of refusal. The locals get what French companies don't want. Contracts, large or small, private or public. French companies have the first right of refusal. And of course, some of you are saying, well, why haven't the leaders done something about it? Well, you all know the history of the 65 older coups that have taken place in Africa. 22 African heads of states were assassinated or imprisoned. 16 of those are from former French colonies. Majority of them had wanted to pull away from the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. So the reality is, to talk about the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, it became a go-to place, because you do that, you find your head on the chopping block. It was just that simple. The fear of the colonizers, my brothers and sisters, is real to this day. The consequences are real. Let's make no mistake about it. How do you tell a man growing up in Botswana, struggling to make ends meet and run his business, to think continental? It's not possible. But us in the diaspora, to whom much is given, much is expected, we have the ability to look at our Africa with a bird's eye view. We have the ability to mobilize our resources, financial resources. The brain drain has left Africa without the capacity, intellectual capacity, that Africa needs to build the Africa we want. The brains that Africa needs are in the diaspora. The brain drain out of Africa started over 400 years ago. When they took the Africans out of Africa as slaves, they took the brightest and the fittest, the ones they thought would survive the transatlantic journey. So to the African Americans, African Caribbean, African Latino, to you I say, don't you ever let anyone make you feel inferior. You are a product of the creme de la creme the world had. Even after they have taken the smartest and the fittest out of Africa, 50% of them still perished in the Atlantic. So you know, the ones who made it were the best of the best. I don't know of any race that could have gone through what Black people have gone through and are still standing. We are indeed indestructible. So I hope, my brothers and sisters, together, when you sit down to have that conversation with your granddaughter and your grandson, you will tell them what we would have done beginning today. That we came together, we deliberated on the issues that we were faced with. We made a commitment that we shall be the race. We shall be the generation that's going to turn over a new leaf. We shall be the generation that's going to say enough is enough. No more shall our children grow up in this world worrying and fearing to be the next George Floyd. It's not enough to mourn George Floyd. Do something about it. We can't continue to be noisemakers and do nothing. We have to change our thinking. Quite often, we do a business plan. We have a project, nicely done. Next thing you know, we are looking for funding. And we are going back to the same people who have oppressed us, who have the strategies to keep us where they want us to be. Does that even make any sense? To my sisters on this call today, think of the clothes, the dresses, the shoes, the handbags that you have in your closet with tags on. What we can do with very little. What we can do with what we consider pocket change. 1,000 of us with $1,000, that's $1 million. 1 million of us with $1,000 a year, that's $1 billion. That's only $83 a month that we are saying, let's think like other races do. How do you think the Jewish fund was started? They started with whatever you can give. The more of us that come up with our $83, we can develop, we can build an African fund, African diaspora fund that will blow the world away. There are over 300 million of us. Whatever you can commit, make a commitment. And I'm insisting that don't make it anything that will be painful. No, anything that, whatever you can afford to give away, that's what you do. That's what you donate. So you can tell the children, before we go to McDonald's, did we put aside our $83? And we teach them that this has got to go to the diaspora fund. That's how we're going to build our Africa. That's how we're going to claim our economic liberation. Let's make no mistake about it. No money, no voice. It is just that simple. It boils down to the economics. We cannot go to the same people who are oppressing us and beg them for money. But what happens when you go begging them for money? You have to give them all your information. You got to turn over everything, including your great-grandmother's middle name. So what control do you have? When I know, if you were all to come together and put whatever little money that you have into a fund in a coordinated way, the sky is the limit. We have a responsibility to show the world that we're just as good as anybody else, that we can no longer continue to be somebody else's underdog, that we can no longer continue to be taken for granted. We're just as smart as anybody else, and we do not need anybody to define us as who we are, because we know who we are. The beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible. So 20 years from now, I hope you and I can begin the journey. So when that question comes from our grandchildren, we'll be able to say, granddaughter, grandson, sit down. United with my brothers and sisters, this is what we did. We pulled our pennies together. This is how much we have accomplished. While the mission is not yet accomplished, while the journey continues, this is where we leave off. And this is where you and your brothers and sisters are going to pick up. And you got to unite in order to finish this journey. But the end game is the children of Africa, in Africa and around the globe, can no longer continue to be disrespected, can no longer continue to be treated as the scum of the earth, and can no longer continue to be called poor when we are the inheritors of the richest continent on earth. We must honor our Africa, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The building of the Africa we want is our responsibility and ours alone. We can no longer allow others from the east, from the west to take over the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is scheduled to begin next year, next month, really. There's a seat that has our name as African diaspora. If we vacate that seat, we are going to be vacating the ability to defend our children's inheritance. If we do not come together for ourselves, we must come together for the sake of our children and generations to come. What Africa has belongs to them. We're at a crossroads at this moment. If we do not unite, the African Continental Free Trade Area is the beginning of undoing the Berlin Conference. The African Continental Free Trade Area is exactly what the Pan-African fathers were looking to do back in 1963 when they ended up with the compromise decision of the African Organization of African Unity. They came to Addis in 1963 to undo the Berlin Conference, but they failed. It's only until April of 2018 that our African leaders finally agreed on the African Continental Free Trade Area. Africa is going to enter the market as one customs union. Hallelujah. We're going to finally be speaking with one voice when it comes to trade. We are hoping intra-Africa trade is going to quadruple in the next 5 years. We are hoping that as we build the Africa that we want, just to put things in perspective, we still need thousands of airports in Africa. The question is, who's going to build them? Is it you or is it going to be the Chinese? We need millions of kilometers of highway. Question is, who's going to build them? Is it you or the Chinese or the Europeans or the Indians or the Russians or the Japanese? We should make a commitment as we continue to dialogue to say, while we make our own clothes, we must also own the textile mill. While we build our own brick houses, we must also own the brickyard. While we fly in planes across Africa, which is what's going to happen with increased intra-Africa trade, we're going to need more airlines. Yes, we want to fly in those airlines, but we want to build those airlines. We want to own the airline, and we want to build and own the airports. Yes, we want to wake up in the morning and ride the high-speed train from Cape Town to Cairo, but we also want to build the train and own the railway line. Getting a job as a conductor or being able to just travel on that high-speed train is not good enough anymore. We want true ownership of our Africa, where we grow the food that we eat. We own the commercial farms, the massive commercial farms. We own the industries that manufacture everything that we need. That is true liberation economically. That is true ownership, and that is the ownership we are talking about, nothing less. We are no longer satisfied by owning a grocery store at the corner of the street. That's not good enough. We want true ownership of those entities that control the economy, that they can no longer come in and destabilize us because they own everything that is the pillar of development in every African country. The answer to that is hell no. We can no longer stand up for that. We know better. We are supremely qualified to build our Africa. All we got to do is wake up, my brothers and sisters. Wake up. Why do we find it so difficult to trust each other, to believe in each other? Well, I want you to know that I'm leading by example. I have been subsidizing myself since I came to Washington 4 years ago. I continue to subsidize myself. I don't get a penny out of ADDI. The volunteers are not getting a penny out of ADDI. I started ADDI with my own money, and I will continue to spend my own money because I believe in what we can do together. This is where we are today. We are here today to talk about way forward. To have you ask that question, what Africa are you going to leave behind for your children, grandchildren, and generations to come? Are you satisfied with your children living the life that you have lived? I know how we live in this diaspora. Some of us work 2-3 jobs to make ends meet, and we work till we die. Our children are going to do the same thing. Work 2-3 jobs till they die. To what end, my brothers and sisters? To what end? The inheritors of such an amazing continent. All we got to do is get up, unite, and take care of it. Take care of it. Let's get involved in mining. Let's mine our gold. Let's mine our own minerals. And because we will be united, we can dictate how much we want to sell our minerals for, not for the buyer to say, I'll pay you so much. And we say, okay. That time is over. That time is over. And this is why we are here today, to begin to prepare for us to answer that question to our grandchildren and generations to come. Let's let the world know that Black people are now united. We may have been asleep for over 400 years. We are now awake from our slumber. We now refuse to continue to be brainwashed. We know their game now, and we know how we're going to strategize to get ourselves out of this conundrum that we've found ourselves in as a race. That we collectively agree that the insanity that we have been through, the insanity that we have suffered from for centuries, insanity no more. Insanity no more. And we are going to be the generation that's going to turn the corner, and that journey begins today. With all of you media people, we're counting on you to redo and rewrite our history, to tell the truth and nothing but the truth about us and our continent, to re-educate not only us, but the world. Even white people need the education. Many white people don't even realize they're racist. They need education. I read a book called Africa 101, which was my effort to try and share with my brothers and sisters what I thought were the very basic, bare minimal issues that we needed to understand. Because when we understand our Africa in her totality, when we understand the issues above the root and the issues below the root, the issues below the root are those issues I talked about. The international financial structure that's totally discrediting Africa, designed to keep Africa down. African countries are getting loans, 15 to 20% interest rate. Some of you may not know, maybe top three African countries may at one point or another defaulted on their loans. Majority of African countries have never defaulted on their loans, and yet their ratings are still very low. You take, for example, COVID. All countries' ratings were low soon after COVID started, but Western countries, their ratings have since been raised. African countries, their ratings are still low, and yet we're least affected by COVID. Go figure. Look at the World Trade Organization, the international trade policies, completely skewed against the Africans, because they don't want Africans to add value to our natural resources so we can create millions of jobs in the West. And yet we are still suffering massive unemployment of our youth. And the safe havens I spoke about, the illegal trade, the illegal mining. You fly low over the DRC, you'll see 747s picking up minerals in the jungles, tarmacs in the jungles. Nobody's talking about all that. Those are the issues I want you to understand. And of course, the tiny little economies that were intentionally designed not to survive. If we do not begin to trade with each other, how does a Malawi guy with his Malawi kwacha trade with a Nigerian guy with his Nigerian naira? It's impossible. And yet it's easier for both of them to exchange with the dollar or the euro or the pound. Those are the issues of the root, my brothers and sisters. That if we do not address them, changing a lead alone is not going to change anything. We must understand our Africa from her totality. So as we strategize, a complete overhaul is needed. We go in with a strategy that will give us the desired results. And that starts by understanding our Africa completely from A to Z. Africa 101 is an effort to do precisely that. A summary of where we have been, what was done, the games that were played, the games that continue to be played, and what we can do to change the course and the trajectory of our beloved Africa. Remember, issues above the root and issues of the root. The issues above the ground and the issues below ground. The issues below the ground is where we have been failing. We have not been understanding them. We have not been appreciating them. We have concentrated on the flowers and the leaves and the fruits and the branches that come and go one season after the other. Let me end by saying, you see, the colonizers came to our Africa. They occupied our home. They're sitting at the table in our house, eating our food. And we prepared the food for them. And when we finish preparing the food for them, we go under the table and wait for them to drop off a few crumbs of our own food. And while we are under the table, they put together a system so we can begin to fight each other over which sister got more chunks, a larger chunk of the chunks of the crumbs under the table. So we fight each other over the crumbs under the table. So we never have to talk about the 10-course meal going on the table. I am saying to you, my brothers and sisters, there's a 10-course meal going on the table. and we are being thrown shiny object while under the table, and we are running after the shiny object when the real deal is in the opposite direction. That is the 10-course meal on the table. Understand your Africa and understand it fully. Then make a commitment to play your part. And the way we play our part is through unity. Our strength is in our unity. Financially, I'm not concerned. Financially, we have the funds. But when we are asleep, we will never trust each other. But when we wake up, we realize that it's not about me today. It's about 10 years from now. It's about 2 generations down the road. It's about 100 years from now. Where do you want your children to be? Where do you want your rest to be? What do you want your legacy to be? Which generation finally took the bull by the horns and say, hey, that's it. The game is over because we are here, united, one formidable force of Mother Africa's children. Enough is enough. Thank you, my brothers and sisters, for listening to me. May the conversation continue.